Hi, my name's Stewart Lynch, and in this video I'm going to show you why I think Xcode is a viable option for introducing you to source control with Git. Of course, you can use the command line, and there are a host of other GUI clients available to choose from, but since you use Xcode to code your iOS projects, why not take advantage of the features it has to offer? In this video, we'll be looking at a case study to see what is available to us with Xcode. We'll be looking at commits to a local repository, branching, checking out different branches, merging branches, merge conflicts, stashes, remote repositories, along with pushing and pulling content, and we'll also look at how you can reset to an earlier commit, and finally how to clone a repository from GitHub. Now, before I go on, I'd like to ask that if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you ring the bell to get notified of new videos, and feel free to leave a comment. If you wish to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. If this is something you want to learn, then keep watching. I have a full series on introducing you to Git source control with Xcode, and I'll leave a link in the description below. But in this video, I want to quickly take you through what is possible with Xcode alone, and maybe make you aware of some things that you were not aware of. I've taken up this challenge because of some of the comments made by my friends on the Fireside with Swift podcast. If you don't listen to that podcast, I recommend that you do, particularly if you're just starting out on your development journey. In a recent episode, they were discussing source control, and I objected to their disparaging remarks about Xcode and its capabilities. Certainly, if you're working with a team and multiple developers working on the same project, well then Xcode might not be the best choice as your Git source control client. But I claim that as an individual developer in control of my own commits, Xcode will meet my needs with few exceptions. So let's get started. There is no starter project for this tutorial, so you'll need to create a new Xcode project. Make it an iOS app and give it a name like Source Control. And if you want to follow along, make sure that it is a SwiftUI project. And I'm going to save mine to the desktop, and I am not going to start with source control. So I have to make sure that this checkbox is unchecked. Let's start by replacing the body of this content view with a navigation view. Inside the navigation view, create a rectangle and add a fill of a color green. Ignore safe areas to extend it to all sides of our device. And create a navigation title and use the string source control. If you check the source control navigator now, you'll see that there is nothing in the Changes tab, and for the Repositories tab, nothing is shown there. And that's because we have yet to specify that we want this project under source control. So let's begin our journey. From the source control menu, choose New Git Repositories. Click on Create at the next screen. Let's repeat what we just did. On the source control navigator, there are still no changes in the Changes tab, and that's because what has happened is that the project has already been committed to your local repository. If you click on the Repositories tab, you can see that we are currently on the main branch. And we also see that here as well. If you drop down the disclosure triangle here and then on branches, you see that branch. And selecting it shows that commit in the history log. If I double click on that commit, it will show you all of the files that were added on that initial commit. Let's go back to Content View and make a change by changing the color to red. And right away you see a blue bar in the margin, and eventually a letter M is beside the file name to indicate that this file has been modified. If you click on the blue line in the sidebar, you can choose to show or discard those changes. If you choose to show, the changes are shown in line with the old lines displayed with no coloring. If you choose to discard changes, it goes away and the line disappears, as does the letter M. Let's change it back again. This time from the Editor menu, I'll choose Side-by-Side Comparison, and you get both versions of this file before and after. If you choose Inline Comparison from that menu, you'll see something similar to what we had initially, and you can return to the regular editor by choosing Show Editor and then bring back your preview. If you choose Commit from the Source Control menu, you are shown a list of all the files that have changes in them, or which have been added. And when you select one, and we only have one, you get a side-by-side comparison of the changes. If we had many files, they'd all be displayed, and each time I select one, a different side-by-side view would be presented. Now I'm going to enter a comment reflecting what this commit is all about and commit it to my local repository. If we return to the Source Control Navigator and select Main, you'll see that the original and the new commit is in the history log. Double-clicking on the new commit will show you that list of files that were committed, and selecting one shows you the same view of the changes made. Let's return now to Content View and embed the rectangle in a VStack. And let's duplicate the rectangle and give it a fill of a yellow color. Let's pretend this is a new experimental feature. And what we had in our last commit was what we were shipping to the App Store. So we want to make sure that we have a current record of that code. So this code should be really on a new branch. And we should have created that branch before we modified the code. Well, not really. Go to Source Control Navigator right now and right-click on Main and create a new branch called Development. Now you have two branches, but your still modified code is on the main branch and it's still current. Right-click on Development and check it out. And you're told that your working copy has uncommitted changes and it needs to be stashed before you can continue. This means that we can save those changes and not commit them in what is known as a stash. And we can leave a comment in case we may have multiple stashes over time. Well, what I want to do is to stash those changes from main and then apply them to the development branch once I check it out. And you can do that all at once if you check that box, Apply Stash After Operation. So let's do that now by clicking on the stash and check out. You can see that the development branch is now the current branch, and those stash changes have been applied here, but not committed. So let's do that now. Let's right-click on Main and check it out. You can see though that the stash changes are no longer in Main, and this was as it was at our last commit. If I check out development once more and add a rectangle in the VStack with a different color, like blue, you have the ability at any time to reverse all or part of your changes back to the last commit. You can choose to discard all changes, which would change all the files, or discard changes only in the current file. And for us, this is the same thing because we only have one file, but I hope you get the difference. So pick one. The blue modifier line disappears. So let's add back that code and commit it. If you check out the history, you'll see that the development branch is now showing 4 commits. Because it started with main, you get the entire history of how we got here. So selecting main only shows those 2 commits that happened while we were checked out of the main branch. Now let's assume now that you found a bug in your shipping product, so you'll need to go back and make a change there. So let's check out main. Let's change the title by adding a plus. That's our change. And commit that change and ship it off to the App Store. If we check out development now to continue working on this new feature, we'll want to make sure that any changes that we made to our shipping version is added to our new branch as well though. So right-click on main and choose Merge Main into Development. The title change is brought forward. Let's make a change now in the development branch by adding another plus on that title. And let's commit it. Alright, so let's return back to main. Let's check it out, where our shipping code is. And let's make another change by adding one more plus to the title. Do you see a potential problem here? We've made a change in development that we did not merge back into this branch. And then we made a different change here to that same line. How is Xcode going to deal with this? Alright, so let's check out development. And let's try to merge that main into development this time, like we did before. This time we get what is known as a merge conflict. If we click on that conflict, we see that we get both views side by side, along with the changes that are in both files showing the differences. The conflict is the one that's shown in red. And we can click on that number and choose how we want to deal with that conflict. We can make a choice of either choosing the left or the right, or choosing the left then applying the right, or vice versa. It would make sense then that here, in this case, that we want the right one. So let's choose that option. Perfect. Let's add another rectangle here to our VStack. How about a green one this time? I'm working on the development branch now, but I want to go back to the main branch to check something out. And when I try to check out main, I'm told that I have some conflicting or uncommitted changes. So I should probably discard them or commit them and try again. Well, I'm not yet really ready to commit, and I don't want to discard because I put all this work into it. And this is where that stash comes in handy. We can choose stash changes from the source control menu to save these changes, and then take them out of our view. We can choose stash changes from the source control menu to save the changes, and that takes them out of our view. And we can even add a comment about what they are. Now, in our source control navigator, within the stashed changes section, I see that stash available to us. Now, when we check out main, there are no complaints. So if I wanted to, I could make some edits. And I can see the stash is even available to me here when I'm on the main branch. Let's go back to the development branch because I've checked out what I need to. And I can see that new rectangle is no longer in our content view because we stashed it. I can now, however, reapply that stash. But you know what? I don't think I really want this, so I'm just going to delete the stash because I'm never going to use it. And then we can discard all changes for our view. So right now we have what is known as a local repository. Everything is on this computer, but where are all of those changes? And how is that handled? Let's take a look at that project folder. It looks normal, and I can see no indication that it's under any source control. And this is because Git places all of its source control files in a hidden directory or a hidden folder. And on the Mac, those files and folders that are hidden all start with a period. And we can quickly see those files by typing Command-Shift-Period. And in gray, it reveals that Git folder. I can expand that folder and you'll see all of the files that manage your source control. The good news is that you don't have to know anything about this, except that if you want to remove the source control from your project, all you have to do is delete this folder. Well, I don't want to do that or even be able to do that accidentally, so I'm going to hide this folder again by doing that same Command-Shift period to hide them. What I do want to do is to also have a copy of my project under source control up in the cloud and synchronize to what I'm doing here. And by far the most common place to do that is on GitHub, especially now that private repositories are now free. Well, first you'll need to go to your Preferences and click on the Accounts tab to ensure that you've added your GitHub account and authorized Xcode to use it. And this is going to require an access token so that your computer can have the ability to interact with GitHub on your behalf or on Xcode's behalf. Rather than spending time here showing you how to do that, I suggest that you check out this post by Russell Gordon. I'll leave a link in the description below. When that is done, you can go to your Source Control Navigator and right-click on the application name at the top and choose New Remote for your application. You can fill in the description if you like and make it either a public or a private repository. I'm going to make mine private because nobody else needs to see that. It's only going to be for me. This then will create that remote repository and push this current branch up to GitHub. If you right-click, you can now choose View on GitHub. That opens your web browser and takes you directly to your repository. And you can see here that there currently is only one branch, and that's the development branch. That was the one that we were on when we created this remote. I also want to make sure that my main branch is here as well. So I'm going to return to Xcode, and I'm going to check out the main branch. And then from the source control menu, I'm going to choose Push. Notice how it knows that this is a new branch that the remote doesn't know about, and it's indicating that it will create it. So let's do that. If we return to GitHub and refresh our page, we see that both branches are here now. Let's switch back to the main branch on GitHub and add a README document. All repos should have one. I'm just going to enter some text here, and I won't add my own title for the commit because GitHub's just going to use this default one here. I'll add a description though. And then I'll commit. Let's return to Xcode and check out that main branch. If I show the project folder in Finder, I see that there is no README there. I need to pull it down from GitHub to synchronize all changes. So let's do that by choosing Pull from the Source Control menu. And shortly, we see that the README file has been added to my project folder. Let's switch back to GitHub, and I'm going to check out the development branch. Notice that there's no README here. Each branch is independent unless you merge changes. So let's switch back to main and make an edit on README here on the remote repository and commit that change. Let's return to our Finder and our desktop and notice that that change hasn't arrived here yet because we need to pull. But before we even do that, let's make a change here for us. Now we'll need to commit that change to our local repository. So I can return to Xcode, and this may take a little while for Xcode to recognize the change, but eventually, when you choose to commit, even though we do not see a README file here in our navigator, we see that it's there showing the change. So let's commit it and choose to push all at the same time. Well, there's a problem. The local repository is out of date, and the pre-commit condition did not meet what the remote repository state was. So let's return to Xcode then, and let's pull down those changes from the remote as I specified that we should have done earlier. There's only one file that has changed, but it has a red C icon denoting a conflict. And it's marked in red, and we can choose what we want to do. This is the item that is different from both of the files, from the local and the remote repository. So let's choose to apply the right one first and then the left. It gives us a compounded change. If we return to the README in the Finder now, we see that those changes have occurred. So we can now push this update, the two compounded changes, to our remote. And if we go back to GitHub and refresh the page, we see the changes. Now it looks like this line break is being represented differently here in this markdown, but we do see the two different entries. Well, after all this work on our development branch, we feel we can push it up to the App Store. But I really only want to do that from my main branch. So with the main branch checked out, as we see here, we can right-click on the development branch and choose Merge Development into Main. This will bring all the changes from the development branch now and merge them with our main branch. So essentially, main and development are identical for now. Perfect. So let's push this up to the remote to make the remote the same. If I check the history now for main, I see all of the commits. However, I've just realized that there's a major bug, and thank goodness I've not uploaded to the App Store yet. I want to revert back to my old main branch so that I can fix that. The trouble is, I've not only overwritten it on my local repository, but also on my remote. What can you do? Well, if you're familiar with Git, you may be aware of something called a hard reset that will allow you to revert back to an earlier commit. Well, unfortunately, there is no Xcode option for that. But there is another way to do that, and let me show you. What we can do is create a new branch from any one of my earlier commits. So let's do that from this one here. And I can do that by right-clicking in the history and branching. And I'm going to call that temp for temporary. Now if I check this branch out, I can see it's my good old main branch. Now I want to delete that old branch from my remote first, and I can do that by right-clicking on the main in the remote section and choose delete. But make sure that you also check that also delete branch on the remote repository checkbox. Now that it's removed from the remote branch, I can delete my old local main branch, the one that we merged into. Now we have temp and we have developer, but I want temp to be called main. So I can rename temp as main. And now I can push that main branch, the new one, up to the remote. Notice how it's saying it's creating one again. So let's go back to GitHub, and I see I have two branches. And that main is our new one. But the issue I have is that the default branch has now been switched to development, not main. And I want to fix that because normally your main branch is the default one that is displayed when you visit your GitHub repo. Easy to do. You can just choose Settings, and then Branches, and you click on this button and switch the default branch to main and update. Now there's one last thing that I want to show you, and this can be a lifesaver. What if you had a fatal system crash and you lost everything on your computer? Or you're on vacation and you've got your laptop but you don't have that repository and you've got a bug that needs to be fixed. Well, this is where cloning a remote repository comes in. Let's exit Xcode and delete our project from our computer to simulate that fatal crash or I'm on a different computer. I'm going to return to GitHub now, and I'm logged into my GitHub account. And from the code button on this repository, I can select from 4 different options. The URL at the top can be used. you can copy this URL and then open Xcode, but don't create a new project. Instead, from the source control menu, you can choose clone and paste that URL into this field and click on clone. Now, I'm not going to do that here for this one because I'm going to use a different option, but that essentially would create a new Xcode project with that branch that we had selected. I cover this first option here in my series, showing you how you can use the GitHub desktop client to manage your projects, and I do use that as an external GUI, but I'm not going to go over that here. You can watch that series. The mistake that you may make is to download the zip, but if you do that, you're not getting any link to this remote repository. There's no source control that comes with a downloaded zip file. The option I like to use is this one, which is Open in Xcode. If you choose this option, it will not only open Xcode, it'll also ask you which branch you want to clone. So select one, and then choose where you want to save that project folder, and click on Clone. Now, since it's coming from a supposedly unknown source, buyer beware, so trust and open. Well, there you have it. Your main branch that we selected, along with all of the history of commits, has been cloned, and it is just like the one that we had just deleted. The problem is I only have one branch, main. If you expand the remote section though, you'll see that it does know about that development branch and all of its history. Well, you can right-click on that and check it out, and it will check it out and pull it from the remote repository and make it your current local branch. Now we really have an exact copy of what we had just deleted. There are some other things that I didn't cover here, such as cherry picking. But to be honest with you, I never do that, so I can't shed much light on this for you. I have found in my experience that Xcode source control features meet my needs quite well. So I hope you've learned something here that you can add to your own toolkit. If you haven't been using source control up until this point, I hope I've convinced you to give it a try. Thanks for watching.